Hi guys, welcome back to the Pageant Project. Hope your 2026 is off to a fantastic start. Almost at the end of January already. Today I wanted to go back to basics. 3 reasons, the only 3 reasons you should be competing in a pageant in 2026 and beyond, more than likely. Now you might think, hang on, surely there can't just be 3 reasons. Well, let me go into this a little bit and you'll understand. And I think for a lot of you who have either been around pageantry for a while or specifically you followed me for a while, this will be a bit of revision, but I think there's no better time to be doing this and going back to basics than the beginning of a new year where everyone's setting their New Year's goals, New Year's resolutions, and maybe entering a pageant in 2026 is one of those goals for you. Now, we often talk in the industry about knowing your pageant why, which, if you haven't heard that before, if you're new, very simply is your reason for competing. The biggest mistake you can make is making the win your pageant why. If the only reason you're competing is because you are convinced that you are going to win the crown, and all you have to do is try again every year, and eventually you'll win, that's a bad idea. I'm just going to say it, it's a bad idea. I could go into all the reasons why, but taken from me, as someone who's been in the industry for probably close to a decade now and interviewed hundreds of title holders, entering to win is a bad idea. When you do it for that reason, even if you win, things may not exactly end up as your dream. I know I had a friend who was competing in a very well-known pageant overseas. She didn't want to win. I told her just to relax and enjoy herself because she was having a hard time at the international pageant. It was basically a bit of a farce. And so she called me in tears and I said, look, just enjoy yourself, have a good time, meet some people. And she did that. And then she won, which was a blessing and a curse because the year of her reign was horrific because the international director was just a terrible, terrible person. So if we're not setting the win as our goal, then what are the reasons for competing? Well, let me put it to you this way. I think whatever reasons you're going to come up with, and I'll give you my 3 in a second, but whatever 3 you're going to come up with, at the very least, need to be things that are under your control. The reasons you're competing are going to be things that you can get regardless of the outcome of the pageant. That's setting it up intelligently. The reason why setting the win as your only goal is such a bad idea is because pageant judging is so famously, let's say, subjective. That's probably the politically correct way of saying it. Sometimes it's downright farcical and nonsensical. But that's why setting your sights on the win as the only goal is really a bad idea. And in general, you never want the feeling, I never want the feeling at least, that the things that I want are not within my control. As in, if I work harder, there's more of a chance of me winning it. Or achieving the thing that I want. I don't like the feeling, I don't know about you, I assume you're the same. I don't like the feeling that I could do everything absolutely perfectly and be the most deserving person on the day. And I understand there's subjectivity involved in that. But just to have it taken away because the director got some zealous celebrity judge in who has no idea what he or she is doing and just decides that he or she has to give it to the prettiest girl or the blonde girl or the one with the most followers, whatever it is. And so you want to set things that are directly under your control. So let's go through these 3 things. Number 1, the 3 reasons you should be competing. Number 1, the people you meet. Now, I say this, and I understand that can sound a bit cliche because we meet people in all walks of life, no matter what we're doing. However, I believe that pageantry attracts a very particular type of woman. And if you are this woman, you'll understand exactly the sort of person I'm talking about. You're hungry, you're motivated, you're ambitious, you're caring, you're empathic, I never know which one to use, but you care and you want to make a difference beyond yourself. You genuinely care beyond yourself. I have not found anything in my entire lifetime and my entire career as a coach anything that seems to attract women like that in the same way that pageantry does. And so if you want to specifically meet people like that, pageantry is an absolute, it's probably the only thing I think you can do where you will meet a lot of women like that. Now you might say, okay, I don't want to meet people. I want to use it as, I want to use pageantry as a platform to launch my acting career, my modeling career, my entrepreneurial career, my political career. I get that. But even if that's the case, that's only going to happen through the people you meet. You might meet a politician. You might meet an entrepreneur. You might meet someone who knows someone. You get what I mean? So even if your eye is on a career, let's say, pathway, it's still going to be the people you meet who can make that happen. So that's number one reason, the people you meet. Number two, I think it goes without saying, the skills you learn. And there aren't many. Let's run through them. So obviously runway skills, interview skills for the vast majority of pageants. You learn some branding and marketing sort of tangentially. If you concentrate, you actually make a focused effort on building your social media, and branding and marketing certainly can be very important in interview as well. So there are a few subsidiary skills as well. But knowing how to talk, knowing how to walk, I will say, unless you're actually planning on being a model or having some sort of career that revolves around the runway skills to me are a bit overvalued. I've heard people who I respect say, well, if you can walk in a bikini in front of a room full of strangers, then you can do anything. And yeah, but also no. I mean, just because you can walk in a bikini in front of a room full of strangers doesn't mean you're going to ace your next interview in front of, a board of 50-year-old men or something like that. So sure, there is some transference, but I think the big skill you can take away is knowing how to talk, knowing how to articulate. And that's as a result of going through pageant interview. I know a lot of young women, I've interviewed them, who said that before pageants, basically they couldn't interview at all. It's not an exaggeration to say some of them went into the interview room for their first time and just started bawling uncontrollably before the first question. So interview, knowing how to talk, knowing how to sell yourself, knowing how to market yourself, these are all skills that you can take with you no matter what career you decide to take. Even if the career is a stay-at-home mum, and by the way, I think that's one of the most important careers on the planet, is being a parent. But even if that's your career, in inverted commas, you still need to know how to talk to your kids, influence your kids, know how to sell to your kids the fact that they should be doing their homework. They should be eating their vegetables. And no, you shouldn't keep punching Tommy in the face even though he keeps kicking you under the desk, right? So that's number two, the skills you learn. The third one, I sort of came across a bit later, and I only realized it, I should say, a bit later on in my career. And that's really, it's just a reason to get out of bed and go to work. Let's take the obvious example of going to the gym, early morning workouts. If you're not competing in a pageant, you might find it supremely difficult to wake up at 5 a.m. when it's freezing out, raining out, and to go for your early morning run. You might still do it, but it's going to be hard. On the other hand, if I tell you, well, you might want to go back under the sheets, but in 30 days' time, you're going to be in a bikini in front of that room full of strangers that we were talking about, you might suddenly be very motivated to get up and go because you know that you need to be in tip-top shape in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is. And so pageantry can be a really neat way, an elegant way of adding motivation to your life without you really even having to try. And a lot of us become we might think that we like having no pressure in our lives. But if you remember back to COVID, where so many of us sort of lost our way because there was no reason really to be getting up because we couldn't do anything, we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't see anyone. And how many of us put on weight? How many of us might have developed some really negative eating habits or mental health habits, or watched far too much Netflix or Amazon Prime, or doom scrolled until it was going out of fashion? And so having that specific date when you're going to be competing can be a really neat extra motivation for those of you who need it to get up early and stay up late. And for me, those are the only three reasons you should be competing. The people you meet, which I also said, subtext, that also could be the opportunities it leads to, but all opportunities come through the people you meet. So number one, the people you meet. Number two, the skills you learn. And number three, that added hit of motivation that just sort of works in the background and helps get you up early, keep you up late. I really think any solid motivation for competing in pageants in 2026 and beyond is going to come down to some variation of that. And I would strongly encourage you this year, more so probably than any other year, if you're going to compete, I get that you're competitive, because I am too, but the winning is just going to be icing on the cake if it happens. Set your sights on being proud of the woman who walks off the stage at the end of the pageant. Focus on continually improving. The Japanese have this concept called kaizen. I believe it's called kaizen, and I could be paraphrasing this, but it's this process of continuous and never-ending improvement. So rather than focusing on the win, and then when the pageant's over, it's like, well, what do we do now? Focus on day by day improving. Even if it's that 1% a day, over time, that's going to compound. I just say this because after the hundreds of pageant contestants that I've worked with at this point, setting your sights on winning is asking for trouble. Even if you win, as I said, with my friend who won that title, and it really ended up becoming a poisoned chalice. The title was icing on the cake. I get that it can be super motivating. And here's one thing that I will finish on. If you are competing because, let's say you watched Miss USA or Miss Universe or Miss America when you were a young kid, and you watched it with your mum, and you dreamed of one day that being you. What I will say is, number one, pageantry has changed a lot in the last 10 or 20 years. But number two, why did you want to become Miss USA or Miss America or Miss Universe or Miss Volunteer America or whatever it is? Why? It's not surely because you just want to wear a crown on your head, because if that's all you want, just go and buy one and Bob's your uncle. No, I would bet that it's because you thought that meant you could inspire. That's a cockatoo. Sorry, the cockatoos are very loud. I just needed to scare it off. I would bet it's because you wanted to make a difference. That was the reason you competed. You thought that if you had that crown, you were on that stage, you would have young girls around the country and around the world looking up to you. Here's the thing. There are other ways of achieving that goal. It's not that you just wanted to be the next Miss USA, Miss Universe. Again, I apologize for the cockatoos. I'm going to wrap this up here, right? It's not that you just wanted the title. It's what you thought that title meant. And maybe the best, this is what life is like in Australia. Maybe the best thing you can do leading into 2026 is whatever reason that you've got for competing in pageants, work out 3, 5, 10 other ways that you could achieve the same outcome that don't involve winning a pageant. That way, if things don't exactly go according to plan, maybe you decide not to enter the pageant or you have to pull out at the last minute. You're then not stuck in that rut of depression where you're going, oh my God, that was my dream and now I can never achieve it. Maybe you've aged out or whatever it is. Pageants are only one way of achieving your goals. There are an infinite number of other ways that you could achieve those same goals. And frankly, some of the other ways might be cheaper, more efficient, and frankly, just better. So regardless of what your reasons are for entering a pageant, brainstorm some other ways that you could achieve the same results. And maybe you won't need those other ways, but it's always handy to have brainstormed them in advance. So when things don't go exactly according to plan, then you can go, well, I have this other way of doing it. I have this plan B, plan C, and you're not going to fall in that rut of depression, which is something, unfortunately, I've seen far too many contestants do after the pageant. So, heading back into 2026 or heading into 2026, end of January, remember those 3 reasons. The people you meet, number 1. Number 2, the skills you learn. And then number 3, the motivation. Make sure you build those into your everyday routines as you're preparing for your pageant, or if you're considering entering a pageant, make sure you keep them at the top of mind, and I'll speak to you next week.